So it is the considered as the mother river of Zhejiang province. It has brought prosperity to the regions along the Qiantang River. And also we see a lot of cultural events happening here. According to some statistics, in terms of the intangible cultural heritage, Zhejiang was performing very outstanding. And Zhejiang province has the most national intangible cultural heritage around China. Now we can see many booths setting up here. So for this fair, it has around 2,000 square meters. We have over hundreds of inheritors gathering here. They are interacting with the visitors. So we will bring you live about the techniques that they are having. It's about the dinner time. Maybe we can start from the food. So today we can target some of the food and also some entertainment. Let's look at this one. This is a very famous food. This is the sesame pepper cake from Zhejiang province. For Quzhong pepper cake is very delicious, and they put salt and the pepper into the cake. And actually, in one of the exhibitions happening in Nanjing, this pepper cake was considered as a very important national intangible cultural heritage item. Let's take a closer look on the sesame pepper cake. Excuse me, I want to ask a question. So why you do this to make the pepper cake? So what I'm doing is actually putting the sesame on the cake. It's very traditional technique. I don't want to use my hand to put the sesame on the cake because it is not hygiene, and in this way I can put the sesame on the cakes more evenly. Can you give us more introduction about the process in making the pepper cake? So sesame is the main ingredient for this cake. We are selecting the best sesame, and we have to wash the ingredient. Actually, it takes us around like 100 processes to make such a small cake. So for this cake, it looks very small, but it is very difficult to make it. This is a time-honored brand. We want to ensure that the cake has the best quality. And some of the ingredients are actually quite secret. And we actually developed this kind of sesame pepper cake on our own. We just want to ensure that this cake is delicious and of good quality. So how many generations of you have been doing this cake? Well, actually, I'm the 5th generation. Are you going to pass down this technique to your family, to your families and your children? Of course. This is a kind of intangible cultural heritage. We want to protect this cultural heritage. I want to pass it down to the future generations. Thank you. Can I taste the cake? Very sticky taste and very delicious. Even though it is a little crispy, but the fillings very tasty. Especially I'm really hungry at the time, so I think this one tastes really good. Thank you. So next, let me see another thing. We just talked about the sesame. Wow, I think this one is very popular. We have so many people lining up here. This is the steamed sponge cake from Longyou. This is also very popular in Zhejiang province, especially during festivals. People would like to gather together and get a taste of the steamed sponge cake. And today is very hot, but we see this enthusiasm of our visitors. Let me interview the successor of this sponge cake. Hello. I think he's quite young, even though he's already the successor of this sponge cake. So why you call it like sponge cake? Do you have any meaning? Well, actually, this sponge cake means prosperity and fortune. I can see a lot of people are crazy about this. And I see a large sponge cake. Can you give us some introduction about the process in making this sponge cake? Well, it takes some time for us for the fermentation, and we have to steam this cake. So, is there any special requirements for the rice or the ingredient for this kind of sponge cake? Because now we are in the southern area of China, I'm not sure if people from the northern side can do the same kind of sponge cake. Well, our sponge cake is the most authentic. I think in Hubei province, even though they're a little bit north in China, but they can do similar kind of sponge cake. Well, this one is the extra large size of the steamed sponge cake. And for this one, I think it must take a really long time. So how long it takes for you to make this sponge cake? Well, just for selecting the ingredients, it takes us 1.5 days. And we also have to wait for the fermentation. It takes around 3 hours, and it takes around like 4 to 5 hours for the steam, because this one is extra large. Thank you. Well, you can see there were so many visitors today. Maybe I can interview one of the visitors to understand how they feel about this food. Excuse me, I want to ask a question. Well, for this kind of food, do you feel familiar about that? Well, actually, for this kind of temple fair, I started to attend this kind of fair since I was a child, but at that time, there were more people attending this temple fair. And I feel very happy that I can attend the temple fair nowadays, and I really want to buy some food back home. Now it's getting late and the temperature is a little bit cooler, and we see more people coming to this temple fair. So I think you just taste this sponge cake. How does it feel? Well, it's very delicious. Can you describe it? It's a little bit sweet, but not too sweet. Very refreshing taste of the cake. Do you feel it is like the cake that you ate when you were a child? Yes, definitely. And today we can see there were so many people attending this temple fair. How do you feel about this temple fair? Well, I like this kind of event can be hosted every year, so more people can feel the cultural heritage. Thank you. Now we just talk about the food, and maybe we can see some of the other items that was just for appreciation. And I want to invite a special guest and one of the organizers from this event. So actually, he or she is also a craftsman. And let's find him and let him show us the charm of the intangible cultural heritage. So actually, he's an expert in promoting the intangible cultural heritage. Well, I'm not quite an expert. I just love doing this. 3 years ago, I started to shoot a documentary. It is about the craftsmanship. And I traveled to 6 provinces and get a lot of understanding about the intangible cultural heritage. So what you do is actually to make more people aware of the intangible cultural heritage and pass it down to future generation. Yes. Nowadays, I think very few people have a deep understanding about the intangible cultural heritage. That's why I really love promoting this kind of events. So it is a very interesting job, and I get to know different kinds of items and different types of intangible cultural heritage. All of this a very impressive experience for me. And I think some of the intangible cultural heritage are gradually disappearing, but I think with the efforts of the craftsmen, they can help to recover this kind of cultural heritage. Let's take a look at this one. It is a silver carving. For this kind of silverware, it used to be the items that used for the marriage. And we have a successor here. He's making the silverware. So can you give us some information about this? What is it? This is a teacup, or we would call it a tea bowl. So what are the process? Well, I have to hammering on the iron, and also I have to polish it. Actually, it is very easy to make such a teacup. I think a lot of items are exhibiting here. Can you give us more introduction to these items? Which one is the most difficult to make? Well, I think this teapot is very difficult to make. You can see there's a dragon here on the body of the teapot. Dragon represents auspiciousness. And on the body part, we have to hammering down. And for this bolt, it requires high level of technique to make it. And in the past, I understand this kind of items are used for marriage or for appreciation. So how are you going to use these items in daily life? We can also make it as an item with the marriage. So if I'm going to marry my daughter, and I will send this teapot as a gift for her. So hopefully we can bring like best luck to my daughter. So if you're going to marry, you can come to this area to find this kind of teapot. So I understand you are the successor of the intangible cultural heritage. When you start to learn the technique, well, I started to learn it from 18 years old, and I'm 55 years old this year, and I have been dedicated in making this intangible cultural heritage for many years. For some time, I think this kind of technique were abandoned, but gradually we have more people are engaged in the industry of the intangible cultural heritage. And now I don't have any apprentice, but I do organize a training class in the university so I can teach my students some of the technique. Hopefully, in the future, we have more people being engaged in protecting the intangible cultural heritage. So we want to educate our kids at a very younger age on how to protect this intangible cultural heritage and pass it down to future generations. So if you are interested in this kind of intangible cultural heritage, maybe you can send a private message to me and I can pass it down to the successor. And this is from the Lishui region. And we can see the celadon and the sword from Longquan. Can you give us some introduction about these items? And for Longquan, it is very famous for cylinder. And for successors, sometimes they're making the semi-produced cylinder. And in Longquan, there were many people who are dedicating in making the Longquan sword. So for the cylinder, it takes a lot of strength and energy to make it, and it is very complicated. Many people are showing these items to the public, but people are paying attention to the price instead of the technique of these items. Some people may not understand that for some people, probably it takes them a lifetime to make just one cylinder. And that's why today we organize this kind of event, so we can show these very precious items to the public. So these people have very good opportunity to have a face-to-face opportunity with the inheritors and successors, and they can understand the stories behind these kind of items. Each item actually has a story behind. And for intangible cultural heritage, for the item itself, it is just an agent, a carrier, but the real meaning of these items is to pass down the culture and heritage. For these items, if people are not understand them, and fewer people will purchase these items. If there's no one purchase these items, maybe fewer and fewer people would like to make these items, and then the intangible cultural heritage will be disappearing in the near future. And today, in this event, there were over 100 intangible cultural heritage items exhibiting today. And we want to see these items, we want to understand the techniques in order to develop our city into a better place to live. We just want the public to have a deeper understanding of this intangible cultural heritage. And today we are at the east side of the city balcony of Qiantang River. And this is actually a central area of the Qiantang River region. And you can see it attracts thousands of people attending this event. We just want to give a good opportunity for our audience to better understand this intangible cultural heritage. So it is a unique temple fair. It is quite modernized actually, and we really want the younger generation to be impressed by this traditional intangible cultural heritage. And we also invite some illustrators to make all of this static item become alive. So for this kind of innovative format, I believe more people will accept it or even like it. let's continue our tour to see other items. I see this is the root carving from Shenzhou. I believe many people from Zhejiang province are very dedicated in the root carving, not just in the Xinjiang region. So for this root, we just want to keep it in a very natural posture or natural condition. We don't want to make too many changes, adjustment to the original shape of the root. So, and you can see different successors, they have a different style in the root carving. Each one is quite unique. And for some of the root carving, they're actually based on the original shape of the root. But some people maybe just choose the roots, but they want to cut the edges of the root and make it into a different shape. So that depends on different artists. They have different interpretation of the root carving. And some people, if they found a very precious root, and it takes longer for him to innovate, to create, because they think the root is very natural and beautiful, and she even doesn't understand how to start with the root. This is the brick carving. Well, this is the green tile, or we say the green brick. And for this item, it's considered as a provincial level intangible cultural heritage. So in ancient architecture, maybe you can see some of this brick carving. So you can find some of this in the ancient architecture. So you can find some of the green tile on some villas and some interior decoration. It is an ancient skill, but we are actually putting innovation to this kind of items. It's quite creative. Thank you. And I think in this temple fair, there is a section for entertainment, so people can interact with the artists, the successors, to get a better understanding of the intangible cultural heritage. Let's move on to the interactive section of this temple fair. Maybe we can go this side. And I just realized that there is a booth for the Xiashi color lanterns. It has a very high level of the appreciation. Let's take a look on this lantern. Let's get a closer look at these lanterns. I think these colored lanterns are actually from Xiashi County, from Zhejiang province. And for this lantern is listed in the National Intangible Cultural Heritage list. I understand there is a 8-character technique. Can you give us some introduction about the 8-character technique? Well, when we talk about the 8-character technique, it refers to bend, bundle, knot, frame, carve, draw, needle, and paste. So let's look inside. You can see some of the patterns are actually using the needling skill to make it. So you can see the craftsmen, they're actually using needle to make the pattern. So sometimes it is very normal, you can see hundreds of thousands of pinholes on the lantern. Well, you just gave us a introduction saying that this lantern is very complicated to make. So how long it takes for one craftsman to make it? Well, it takes at least 1 month to make one lantern. So all of these lanterns are handmade. So can you see these color lanterns in the county, the Haining County? Well, we have a cultural street in Haining County, so you can see this kind of xiashi color lantern all around the year. In the past, probably you can only see it during festivals, but now as we set up the cultural street, you can see these color lanterns in 4 seasons all around the year. Thank you. Well, if you missed this temple fair and you really want to take a look at the xiashi color lanterns, please visit Haining, because there we have a cultural street and you can see this kind of color lanterns all around the year. Let's find something fun. Well, here we see the basket. It's a traditional item from Hangzhou. So people are using bamboo strips to make the basket. I still have my impression when I was young. I learned how to make the basket. I think some visitors come here, they really want to take one of them back home. Are you going to make one today? Well, it is very difficult for me to learn how to make it. It's very difficult to weave. If no one do it, then probably now we cannot see any of this basket. So for this basket, what is the function of that? Well, it is a very traditional technique, craftsmanship. It has over hundreds of history. In the past, we will put a string of basket and hanging on the door, and it represents good fortune. And also there is a tradition, a local custom for the rural area, and people may want to put the basket on the beam of the house. And this also represents prosperity and good fortune for the residents. And even today, we still see some of the villages hanging this kind of basket on the beam of their house. In the past, we sell this basket at a very low price. It costs around like 20 cents per unit. And in the past, I sell this kind of basket for a whole day. Probably I can only earn 2 RMB. In the past, when people are visiting Hangzhou, they must take one of these baskets back home because it represents good fortune and they would like to take it back. And for the technique of this kind of basket, I think it's very similar for you to make the larger size basket. So what is the specialty for this smaller size basket? Back in the old days, we may use some of the hay to make the basket. And for the junket, we have a special dialect for that. You may not understand what is a junket. So for each one of these container, we use different technique. So you may use a different technique in making a junket, but you may use another kind of technique to make this kind of smaller basket. So we can tell the differences, but probably you won't notice that. I realized that you actually soak this with water. So why are you going to do this? Well, for this kind of bamboo strip, it is quite fragile. We want to protect this strip. We have to select carefully for the raw materials. And we will try to select the bamboos in winter. So for all of these bamboos, it has been growing for over 2 years. We can check the root of the bamboo to identify the sincerity of this kind of bamboo. If the bamboo has been growing for over 2 years, we can cut it off to make basket, and then you can keep this kind of basket for over 10 years. Maybe you can demonstrate how to weave this kind of basket. So for this one, we actually need 5 different ingredients to make it. This one is 鼻孔 meat, that's what we call it, and passing through this hole. And we are going to make a knot on the edge. So every strip, it is around 2 millimeters in length. And we have to cut it into a very smaller piece in order to make the weaving. So how many strips you need to make one basket? Well, for one part of the bamboo, you can make around 6 small baskets. Can you make 12 of it? No. So you can use one bamboo in order to make around 10 smaller baskets. So it takes around half an hour for me to weave one basket, and it has around 12 processes. So how long it takes for you to finish this one? Well, after I finish this, there are 2 other processes for me to finish this one, and we have to choose another material to do it. We want to see the finished product. Can you show one of it to us? So for this one, I have already finished the knot. Well, this one is the finished product. Actually, this one is an innovative basket. It is not just a basket anymore. Now I have changed it to a Iranian bells. And for this kind of basket, the villagers will hang it on the beam of their household. Now in the Jiang village, people are still hanging this kind of baskets in their house. Do you have any apprentice or any successors? Well, now we have over 100 pupils who are learning this. Some of the pupils, they are taking the training class for over 3 years now. So for some of their children, they have already mastered the technique to make the basket, at least some simple ones. And in my family, we have 5 people who are working on the basket. So for this kind of technique, it's actually passed down from a neighboring village. When my grandma moved to Jiang village, she actually passed this technique down to her offsprings. So I think many people can't wait to learn how to make the basket. Let's continue our tour to see if there were other things. Maybe we can move to the other side. This is the section C, and we see so many craftsmen are gathering here. And in section A and B, we have a lot of craftsmen and also some successors. So let's see if anyone are making the intangible cultural heritage right now. Let's take a look at this one. I believe this one is very familiar with everyone. This is the sugar painting and the sugar man. So I think when you're making this, probably you have to know how to paint it, and then you have to make this kind of a shape. Well, when we start to do it, I have to think about it in my head, and then I have to make it. I start to make this sugar painting from 1982, and actually my family are all knowing how to do it, and I am the third generation of the successor. Let's have a taste. How do you feel? It's very sweet. Do you like it? I have never tasted this before. How do you feel? I'm very excited about this sugar painting and the sugar. It tastes very delicious. So my zonetic animal is dragon. Can you make a dragon for me? Let's see if he can make it. So is this brown sugar? No, this is the white sugar. So what is the technique that you are using to make this sugar painting? Well, we have a lot of processes in making it. Well, I have been doing this for many years, so I think it's quite easy to make it. Now you're boiling the sugar, so it also requires special technique to make it. Yes, you have to control the heating in order to control the flavor of the sugar. So how many patterns you can make? Well, probably I can make 150 or 160 patterns. So except for making the zonetic animals, and can also make some figures. So I think you are coming from Wu Town. So is it very popular out there for this sugar painting? Yes. Oh, and I think back in the old days, people have to kill in order to get one of these sugar painting. Well, I can already see the shape of the dragon, the hat. And I can see so many kids surrounding this dragon. So after you finish it, maybe I can give it to one of the children here. Who wants it? So after we finish that, we want to show it to our viewers. And then I would like to take it as a gift to one of the child here. And also you can see a lot of different cartoon characters here. This is very popular among kids. And this one I think is a green dragon sword. It's very vivid. And also this one is the red boat from Nanhu. So can you pull it up? I want to show it to our viewers. Well, we have to cool it down a little bit. And I see a very young gentleman who's also making this. So is him your apprentice? Yes. I started to learn how to make this sugar painting since 7 years old. And this year I'm 13 years old. So I have been learning this for over 20 years. So what attracted you to learn this kind of technique when you were very young? When I was very young, I liked eating candies. So I want to make it and I want to provide this to other children. And I just want to share it to others. So the kids can learn the intangible cultural heritage since a very younger age. So what do you think is the biggest obstacle for passing down the intangible cultural heritage, especially among younger generations? Well, in my hometown, we have a lot of projects that enter into the schools or universities, so more people will get to know about this cultural heritage. Well, the dragon is finished. This looks very beautiful. Who wants to take it? Now this one is for you. Maybe say hi to our viewers. Thank you. Do you like this kind of temple fair? Brilliant. I love it. And we have a very beautiful scenery here. And also it is very bustling in this temple fair. We are having a lot of fun here. And for this kind of sugar painting, we cannot see it in Hangzhou. That's why we travel here to experience this traditional cultural heritage. And on that side, we have a paper cutting. Maybe we can show our viewers some of the paper cutting. So for Fuyang paper cutting, I believe it has a long history. And I think it is also part of the intangible cultural heritage. And for this kind of paper cutting, at least have over 100 years of history. And my mother, she's already 87 years old, and I am the 3rd generation for the successor. Can you do a simple paper cup now? Can you do a paper cut with CCTV pattern? Well, maybe you just do something that you think you're most good at it. What about this one? The swan. And actually, we have 8 strands in this paper cut. So it takes me less time to do the xi shape character xi in the paper cut. So for this kind of paper cut, it needs really high-level craftsmanship and a special technique to do it. So when you are cutting the paper, can you give us more introduction about the paper cutting? So first you have a paper in square, fold it in half, double fold. Well, it's a on-site pedagogy, so maybe you can take out a piece of paper and learn how to do it. So you have used your hands to make the folding, and you have to mark it in 3 parts. By only 3 cuts, you can make the character xi. So let me show you. This is the 3 parts of the paper. But on the top one, you have to fold it in half. Make 2 folds on the first section. And you fold it backwards. Now you can start the cutting. So for beginners, maybe they have to draw the lines before they cut. Well, for me, I don't have to think about it and make the paper cutting. Well, now I will do the first cut. So this is the hollow out technique. Now I will do the second cut. Now I will do the third cut. Also a hollow out cutting. This is the area I made the cut. Now it's ready for the character xi. Let me show you. So only by using 3 cuts I can make the Chinese character xi. So the first cut, I'm actually doing the hollowing out for this character. So hollow out is the main technique I'm using to make this character. So let's show this character to our viewers. Well, I will put it on the white paper. Let's take a look. So it's very practical because you can see when people are doing some celebrations or are getting married, they will paste this kind of character in their household. Well, it takes you just a few minutes to make this paper cut. It's very simple. Thank you. You can actually doing that at your home. Pretty soon we will have the Spring Festival. In a half-year time, we can try to make this kind of paper cutting. And we also see other things demonstrating on the other side. And we also, maybe we can see some of the intangible cultural heritage. More of them are traditional cultural heritage. And in the Jianggan district of Hangzhou City, they have made a lot of achievements in the promotion of the intangible cultural heritage. And we have Director Zhu from the propaganda department of the Jianggan district. Can you give us some introduction about the work that has been done by the government? For the intangible cultural heritage, most of the time we see this heritage has been passing down in the rural areas. But from the governmental perspective, first of all, we have to identify where are these intangible cultural heritage. Some of them may be in the village or in some like small counties. So we have to find out this cultural heritage. And then we have to give a rating for this cultural heritage and decide which kind of cultural heritage needs to be protected. This is what we need to do as a government. Second, we want to provide a platform or an opportunity for the successors to showcase this intangible cultural heritage to the public. That's actually what we're doing right now. For this cultural event, we have invited people from around like 50 surrounding counties or villages coming here. And today, it is actually the first Intangible Cultural Heritage Temple Fair in Jianggan district. And in the future, we will release some policies which encourage the passing down of the intangible cultural heritage. And in the future, probably we will set up some curriculums in schools so that children will be educated about this kind of cultural heritage. We just want the younger generation to like this kind of cultural heritage. And third, we may also want to use the internet to further promote the intangible cultural heritage. We also want to attract some younger generations, attract more innovative individuals to be engaged in promoting the intangible cultural heritage. We have been setting up a platform, the Internet Plus project. So we take some photograph of the intangible cultural heritage, and then we display this cultural heritage on the internet. And the purpose is to showcase these items. So how do you feel about the promotion right now? And in the Jianggan district, actually, we are also organizing a kind of cultural heritage competition. And we also are working on some overseas projects to promote the cultural heritage. This is also well received by the international society. And you can see today we have so many kids here. And some of the students or younger children, they really love this kind of intangible cultural heritage. In some of the schools, they're even setting up curriculums to promote this cultural heritage. And also they teach the students how to make this cultural heritage. Thank you. I believe with the joint efforts with the craftsmen, successors, as well as the government, in the future, the intangible cultural heritage will be thriving, just as the mother river, the Qiantang River. And for this temple fair, it lasts for around 3 days. If you are interested, please pay a visit to Hangzhou and experience the charm of the intangible cultural heritage. Now we have come to the end of this live streaming. Thank you for watching.